How's it going, everybody? JT here on behalf of the ETH Finance Daily General Discussion on our Ethereum and the EV Mavericks DAO. We are back for happy hour number 109. We've got Chaz Schmidt here from Klima Protocol. Say hello, my friend.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
Happy to have you along, man. We're real excited to talk about Klima DAO. We haven't or Klima Protocol. We haven't talked a whole lot about carbon credits on the chain, and so we're going to get a big education on that. And just real glad that you carve out some of your time this busy spring. I'm sure you're going crazy. You're a co-founder there. We're going to learn more about that in a minute. We need everybody to be smashing some bells out there. Give us a thumbs, give us a like, and make sure you subscribe to this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Head on over to dailydoots.eth. Designed and produced by our very own Hanny Abu. Well, Chaz, it's good to see you, my friend. I saw you briefly in ETH Denver, I think this last year, but also just in the last couple of years too. We've had a chance to hang out a bit. You've had a really interesting journey, and let's just jump right into it. Your origin story is kind of interesting because you were an English major in college, yeah?
Yeah, so I attended Ohio State. I originally entered Ohio State.
The best marching band in the world.
Absolutely, and number one football team right now.
Yeah, it sure is nice for the marching band to let that football team play on that field. So
it truly is. It truly is. But yeah, I entered college as a computer science major. I grew up a computer kid, like a lot of kids who were born in the 90s, into the latest gadgets, always dissecting technology, and a little too young to hit the first wave of Bitcoin. I was in high school at that point, but midway through college, I always like to joke that I was you can pretend to read books, you can't pretend to know math. So I was always a procrastinator. I had undiagnosed ADHD, and then eventually kind of got my act together in the middle of college, took a semester off, and that's when I discovered Ethereum, which changed my life. What I ended up doing was I decided that, well, what I'm going to do is pick the classes that I had the best time, and it was easiest to do, which was writing for me. And then I was like, the time I save with that, I'm going to try and dedicate that extra time toward contributing to the Ethereum community. I don't know what path that'll lead to, because at this point, this is about 2016. 2016 coming into 2017, I was like, I don't know what this will lead to, but if I dedicate enough time to it, there's only so many people who have X number of years in Bitcoin experience, which I was seeing on job applications at the time. So I was thinking, well, if Ethereum was only launched within the last year or so, as long as I contribute as enough time to the community, it has to give back to me. That's kind of how this open philosophy works.
Very good.
Decentralization.
Chaz, I don't know if it's just me, but your microphone cuts in and out just a little bit, like the level cuts out. It doesn't cut off. It just backs off a little bit. Maybe just move it closer to your mouth.
Yeah, my mic's not very good, so if that happens, let me know, and I'll move it a lot closer.
That's what it is,
if I have to, I can switch to the webcam mic, too.
Okay.
Let me know if that keeps happening.
No, it's not bad.
So essentially at the time, I was like, the simplest way I can do that is if I leave a comment every day in Reddit. If I just go to r/Ethereum or ETH Finance at the time, or no, ETH Trader.
Yeah, you've been there for a long time.
And so my thought process was, as a student, I have more time to look into like being kind of just an FAQ, people who can be helpful. Everybody, you weren't born knowing this knowledge, and neither was I. So there's no dumb questions in crypto, because it's the kind of thing that it doesn't come intuitively to everyone. So I thought, why not give as much time as I can to answering people's questions, and that'll just make me a student in the craft as well by learning as much as I can. So then I continued with my degree. When I went back to school that fall, I founded a crypto club and ended up getting over 100. I think it was like over 150 members at one point. We had to keep upgrading rooms up until the price started crashing in 2018, and then we could go back to a normal classroom. That was a good experience in learning how to educate people and how to get community activated in just my local area, and teaching them how to be safe and what technologies they can use at their disposal to, promote what ideals they see. And then as I left college, I was just looking for an opportunity, and I was lucky enough to land a gig at At the time, it was settle.finance, which also was ETH gas station. The first article I wrote was actually on ETH gas station, where people used to check the gas price, all the old geezers before P1559. But then I wrote and then we launched DeFi Pulse shortly before, like right around the time I started writing articles for them, and then went full time after leaving school. I took my finals and then immediately started writing for DeFi Pulse. And back in the day, that was where people would check TVL. I like to say we didn't invent the term TVL, but we popularized the term TVL. It was like the group of us producing media and the stats around that, and the community for contributing the code they did to the adapters. And I'm happy that I was able to have experienced that moment in time in early DeFi where I got to be kind of part of a central point. And I always like to say somebody has to write the history, and then suddenly I was like being a part of it, helping people shape like their daily perception of what's happening on chain. And luckily we had that place in time, and I like to see that DeFi Llama is continuing that spiritual successor, like with the more open approach to it. And then around 2021, I was like, I'm kind of getting antsy writing about all these other DeFi protocols. Things have been popping off for almost a year, and like I really have been around 20. I tried to encourage as many people I had met throughout my years in college to try and try blockchain solutions, even just explore. A lot of remittance payments were a big focus back then with DAI, and trying to use the DAI savings rate to try and help people. Because that DAI savings rate doesn't mean much to somebody who's used to a stable banking system and treasury bills, but without access to like a more stable financial system, like DAI savings rate was a big deal back then. So I was trying to help get people into that, which led me into pushing a team I knew who was helping sell carbon offsets and source carbon offsets for people using modern technology like Stripe and those kind of deals and APIs to make it even easier to approach, but still Web 2. And I kind of gave them the nudge to get into try doing a CDAI pool, it was actually RDAI, redirected CDAI yield at the time toward carbon offsets, and that kind of got their brain ticking. And I was still working at DeFi Pulse at the time. And then when I went to jump off to do my own thing, Klima DAO had been sort of this project I'd been keeping tabs on since for a few months into that summer. And then I didn't know at the time it was one of the teams that had formed this group of Klima DAO, the original founders that I then joined as a co-founder. One of the teams was the one I nudged into getting into it, and it ended up just being all the teams that were working on on-chain carbon credits and environmental assets at the time kind of banded together to be like, why don't we make one standard, and we'll work with Olympus DAO to fork their protocol to bootstrap an initial source of carbon on chain and incentives to draw that carbon on chain as well, and produce the first what at the time was called a carbon bridge to be able to take a carbon credit, which for people that don't know, am I talking too much, by the way?
No, this is great. Because I just want to make sure I heard this right. You've never had a real job before in the real world.
No.
You were
okay, so in the summers and stuff, I would work stuff, but that's about it.
Yeah, but this is really key for anybody.
I graduated straight into crypto.
You graduated college and went straight into crypto. That's a very first generation type of thing. That's kind of like, Paul Brody's mother was the first woman at Oxford to do a mainframe computer. That was a first. So for you guys to be, or for your generation, those 100 kids and that, I'm wondering how many of those kids, those 100 kids or so you had in the clubs in college, went on to continue into Web3 or crypto native stuff. I bet you might just be you, but I bet quite a few of them, like crypto's pretty sticky. I bet they're adjacent to it, or at least paying attention still, or at least I would hope they are.
Yeah, I know a handful at least are still into cryptography.
Cool.
It's crypto adjacent at the very least, and I'm sure they brush up against it more often than not.
Yeah, that's excellent. So it's pronounced Klima. Okay, so let's just go right into what is a carbon credit. Let's just start with just the basics for, not just even crypto relay, but let's talk about carbon and carbon offset, and what do those terms mean for viewers that may not even know what that is?
Yeah, the concept is pretty simple on the premise. It's the idea that it's a carbon credit is a unit that is an incentive for people to reduce or remove carbon or carbon equivalent gases from being emitted into the atmosphere. The easiest example of that would be like what a lot of people are familiar with, which is direct air carbon capture, which would be like a device that just sucks carbon out of the air, and then every carbon you remove from the atmosphere, each metric ton would be considered one credit, and then that's probably the easiest example. But the other examples people are definitely familiar with are like afforestation or reforestation, where you're protecting forest or planting new forest. Um, and the way it works is you have third-party auditors who go out into the field and verify over years the amount of carbon that is either captured by, say, a forest or reduced by a renewable project. And then what it helps the market do is in places where it it basically gives you more bang for buck for your climate finance. When you're trying to finance something that would help reduce your emissions, it allows you to put a place where it's going to have the most effect. In the sense where if you could spend $1 and get 1.2 tons compared to 1 ton somewhere else, why wouldn't you? It's and it goes along with the strategy for companies to help them. On one side, you can try and reduce the number of carbon tons or metric tons of carbon you emit into the air, but the reality is that it's going to be a slow transition for a lot of industries, and like fossil fuels and other emissions are going to be something that need to be tapered off slowly. So on the other side of the coin, you can start to finance projects that reduce emissions and help incentivize reductions where possible. And so what KlimaDAO is really trying to do is lay the infrastructure and take advantages of all that blockchain has to offer to allow a new type of market, or allow the environmental asset markets to be able to come on chain in a way that is more open and enables liquidity and transparency. Essentially, Klima 2.0 builds upon what we learned from the first version of the protocol, which was a direct fork of Ohm, and was built for more of expanding a stablecoin. And what we learned was that in order to have an actual, what Klima, the token is an index that is backed by at least 1 ton of carbon, and an actual a basket of environmental assets, including 4 tons of carbon, which is when you finance a project and are guaranteed tons in the future as that project matures. So it's a portfolio of spot and forward credits. And the beauty of Klima 2.0 is it takes what was one token and splits it into 2, which allows you to have the fixed governance token, Klima X, and have Klima, which is now the index, continues to be the index for carbon, but allows the value of the management of that asset portfolio to accrue to a fixed governance token. And it allows both to have a different role in their staking. It's a dual staking token system, which allows you to stake. One of them sets the pricing of the carbon assets in the portfolio, and the other one basically limits the risk of the emissions and how much you want to allocate incentives toward any given asset in the portfolio. So I would encourage people to go to the websites that are on screen, klimaprotocol.com, and there's a white paper and FAQ about the current fair launch, which is taking place. I think the white paper is also interactive. It's a really good place to learn about the dual token system, which honestly, if I try and say it out loud, it kind of butchers it. The mathematics in it are so elegant. There's like nice curves and everything that it's almost hard to articulate into words. It's one of those things, as somebody who has experienced the history of DeFi, I really, the thing that drew me to carbon in the beginning was that in environmental assets, is that they are something that, since they're purely tracked by science and third-party auditors, they're perfect for the pipeline that creates tokenization. If you think about what real world assets need, they need some sort of Oracle system or a third-party verifier, which that's exactly what's happening. It happened in the voluntary carbon markets outside of crypto. And crypto is an incentive alignment tool. What better way to align the incentives of people behind if they want to take climate action and expand their accessibility and the world's accessibility to climate financing and benefit from taking part in that. The benefits that blockchain offers were a perfect marriage with this nebulous asset that is environmental asset, which is a carbon credit, which is easily tokenizable. It's not a card that can be seen. It's something that is purely based on trust by verifying, which is an inherent tenet of cypherpunk ideology. I don't know what other way to put it.
So okay,
Questions.
yeah, go ahead, Logri.
Why has TradFi so poorly served the carbon credit market? Like, I can't go to Fidelity and easily buy carbon credits. I looked into, literally when Klima was launching its 1.0, I looked into whether I could acquire some carbon credits and go through the bridge process, bring them on chain, and profit from being a participant on that side. And it was so sketchy. You'd have to like call some people in Brazil and then like wire them a bunch of money, and then in theory they'll add you to like a gold registry, and then you had to contact the bridge company and like strike your name from the registry on one side after providing proof of ownership. It was it wasn't synchronous, right? It wasn't atomic. It was full of trust from very sketchy people the entire way through. And then there wasn't any financial products on top of that in TradFi to really support this system. So why has TradFi been so bad at supporting carbon credits as an economic instrument compared to so many other things that we have, like stocks, equities, ETFs, whatever? Like, what's so hard about carbon credits that's made it so well served?
I think that's a fantastic question. I think one way to put it would be there's an incentive misalignment that I've seen historically in the carbon market where proprietary software, proprietary methods of verifying credits can cause an incentive misalignment where it wants ossification. People want to try and monopolize a certain type of trust. So once they generate a network of buyers and brokers, it's easier to monetize it if you can keep it locked down than it is to try and expand it and keep it more trustworthy. And that creates risk in a sense, where the more you build up a centralized entity, that trust needs to be invaluable. And that's where historically the carbon markets have struggled, where some people, it's a market that is rife for fraud if someone is a dishonest actor. And so the problem with that is the friction in having the desire for monopoly is that it costs you more, and the friction ends up being that they know they have somebody who wants to buy the product. If somebody is already in the state where they're trying to cover a net zero goal, they're in need of carbon credits, or there's somebody who has a strong moral or personal desire to address climate change, and they know there's a market to take advantage of that or benefit from that. And so what KlimaDAO is trying to do is really expand that liquidity and make it more open to the point that it kind of takes that profit motive and spreads it out to anybody who's a willing participant. By opening it up, it's kind of like how banks in the past, or even like credit issuers, can take advantage of people in desperate need and can charge higher interest rates. And then once you spread that to a more open situation like Aave, you see that rate equalize as people find opportunities to take advantage of it. I think in the past there's also been a lack of technology, so it's easier for verifiers to miss things. Where now we have a lot more satellite imagery, like we have a lot more gadgets, IoT you can put on the ground that can measure.
There's a little more
carbon
AI
real time.
applications too, right? So you can
Absolutely.
monitor things at higher scale than you used to be able to with the help of some AI tools that I've seen in this ecosystem. I'd seen plenty of examples of like nefarious double counting of things, or taking a forest that was already not planned to be. It's like someone who is sitting over, a giant vat of oil with a torch and saying like, "Pay me or I'll drop it." Right? Yeah. It's like, well, if the money wasn't there, you wouldn't be sitting there holding the torch. Right? It was. It's a very difficult.
And that's why additionality
to begin with.
Yeah, that's why the concept of additionality, which is that the carbon credit needs to provide something that a benefit to the environment or to society that would not exist without this incentive. So without the carbon credit, this project wouldn't take place, and that's why taking credits from quality verifiers is such an important thing. And one of the things that's improved since Klima 1.0 is that the in conversation is no longer do we tokenize, but how do we tokenize? How fast can we tokenize our carbon credits? How can we get our carbon project from your registry straight to the blockchain? And there are many registries which
are
are
you trying to
already
go
integrated
like
with the blockchain.
Are you trying to go through the gold registry and have them do the attestation of the chain, or are you trying to go directly to the carbon credit provider and create your own blockchain registry?
I think it's open to both in the sense that there's no reason if there's already quality programs out there not to expand the liquidity on chain by starting off with already working and then being able to take the uh, utility that's provided through the liquidity and the pricing mechanism, the inventory adjustment mechanism of Klima 2.0, and allowing the bond markets to price the new series of environmental assets that come on chain and are developed in a proper accordance against the other types of environmental assets that have existed historically. So people have something to, because since it is such an early market, you need something to price it against, is a good way to put it. Is that, and that was part of uh, a big outcome of Klima 1.0 is that now that there's a huge supply of carbon on chain, a significant portion of the VCM moved on chain within just a couple years of launch. That now you see there was before Klima 1.0 there was no way to actually get a real time price for a basket of quality carbon credits. Where now you can get it in real time by just looking at Aerodrome or looking at Uniswap or any DEX you'd like. And
What's
that's
the
the
liquidity
benefit.
depth on that? Like, what's the 2% slippage number in dollar terms for base carbon tons?
Well, right now it's a little tricky because we're with the Klima 2.0 not being out yet. A lot of the incentives with our aerodromes are shifting from Klima to be able to prep for the Klima 2.0 fair launch, where a lot of Klima is being
I'll
um,
gladly accept an answer from a
baked.
month ago.
Uh, well, let's pull up. Let me pull up CoinGecko. I believe for BCT, I think it's a few like 10,000, like 20,000 or so. Let me double
Okay,
check.
so and the other thing was, it used to be the case that Klima was basically going for the trashiest, low, like the least trustworthy, just to try and sponge as many carbon tons off the market as possible. Like at a strategy level, you weren't going for the highest quality carbon tons. You were going for the lowest cost ones.
Yeah, the
Is
idea
that
was.
still the case with Klima R2, or has that changed?
Yeah, I would say that the idea was initially you can't start with the highest quality tons and then open it up to lower quality tons because you're essentially taking the value of your inventory and just leaking it over time and letting people arbitrage the difference. So you have to start from the bottom. You had to start from the bottom up to build a base of what that's literally the base carbon ton is BCT is what we're referring to. The basket of the oldest vintages is the best way to put it, which typically the newer the vintage, people have a preference for newer vintages, and vintage just means the year that the carbon credit was issued. So when it was assessed for having produced that impact. So in BCT, that's a lot of like renewables, some ranging clear back even to like 2009 or so, like Chinese hydro. Um, the you Over time we've built up our inventory using forward deals where basically carbon projects come to KlimaDAO and ask for financing and cut of the credits that they produce at the end. So over time we've been able to build up a base of more quality tons. And Then the idea with more forwards deals is then you're starting to get tons at a lower rate before they're even on the market. And then by the time they hit the market, you're able to sell those to the people who want to use them at a profit and finance the next part of the flywheel and finance even more forwards deals. And so that ties into Klima 2.0's bond markets, which allow for more assets to be priced forward into the future, so people have more determination of pricing. So that way, it allows them to understand what kind of market they're dealing with in the future. And as you build up certainty, you can have more maturity in the market, which allows you to start having a deeper liquidity, more maturity. You can start building more products on top of it, which is our hope in the long term is that the carbon markets are still a young market compared to a lot of financial markets. Like environmental assets are still very new. And the idea is if you can prove it with the the oldest one, carbon, you can start to expand it out into other types of environmental assets in the future, like potentially like renewable energy credits or maybe even nuclear energy credits. Kind of depends on into the future what the market desires and what kind of science can be performed to verify it.
Okay, so if I was to jump in right now on the website, what can I do? What are some things I could do? Because I got a lattice fired up over here, and I haven't logged in or anything other than I think I got. Oh, I did get logged in. It looks like. Let me switch my monitor view here. So when I logged in, it brought me to this my rewards, my points, my Klima deposited, and then it shows a leaderboard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so currently, right now, what's happening is what's called the Klima DAO 2.0 fair launch, where you're able to take, to keep it simple, I'll call it Legacy Klima, which is the Klima which was launched in 2021 on Polygon and migrated to Base over time. And when Klima 2.0 comes out in estimated end of quarter 3, maybe quarter 4, it's going to be a dual token system, so there'll be a new Klima token and there'll be a new Klima X token. The Klima X token is a fixed supply, and it's the new governance token as part of the dual token system. So what the fair launch is the ability for people to participate in the launch of Klima 2.0. When Klima 2.0 comes out, this is how they will be allocated the new supply of the tokens. So I can't remember the exact values off the top of my head. We'd have to go to the FAQ, which I think is
Right
two
here.
to the left of that right there. Yeah, that'd be perfect. There's a table that goes over the exact numbers right there. Yeah, so there's like a point system, which we're already past the week, so the multipliers don't matter as much. But essentially, it's a last man standing situation where the people who stake the earliest will end up getting the most points over time because it compounds over the days. And I'll warn you, there's a base burn of 25% as soon as you stake, and then up to a year it'll be 100%. So the idea is you want to be staked the entire time until Klima 2.0 launches for the largest stake in the new protocol. And so this is currently the fair launch that's going on to launch the new tokens. The idea is that after this fair launch, the legacy Klima token will be still around and will still be backed by the one-to-one carbon that was promised by the protocol initially, and still be redeemable for its carbon in the retirement system. But the secondary market for that is uncertain, is a good way to put it. And so there's basically a decision for people to be made who have Klima to either stake or choose to whether they want to take advantage of our auto compounder, which is currently like the liquidity for legacy Klima.
So I need to get some Klima tokens to do this, yeah?
Yeah.
So like Uniswap, is that what you said? Does that work?
Aerodrome is the best one.
Aerodrome. I'll just Google Aerodrome Finance.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And,
JT gets rugged by no,
that's all right. Hey, let's see. Browser wallet. I guess that'd be like the MetaMask. All right. There's that. Sign in. Confirm. See if it pushes over here. Chickadee check.
While that's happening,
Yeah.
are there any integrations with the carbon tons for generating yield? Is it available for lending on Aave, or is there any significant secondary market where you can have an incentive for holding rather than just buying to burn and offset your carbon?
Yeah, so historically there's been markets like ExtraFi. I'm not sure they're still offering lending at this point. They were doing leverage farming at one point for our aerodrome pools. I'm not sure what the yield is on that anymore. In the future, there will be opportunities with a product that we'll be launching, which stay tuned for more information on KUSD, which is more like a stablecoin type asset, which will have more reliable like bonding type yield based on the inventory of off-chain projects that there'll be more details coming out about that. But essentially, that's one opportunity. And then when Klima 2.0 is out, there will be emissions for staking Klima X and Klima based off of how the protocol performs in different emissions factors. But yeah, there'll be incentives past this. But currently, no Aave pool. But that's something we're definitely looking into when we launch something like KUSD, which we think will have a lot more appeal for institutional players because of its more stable nature. It's something that would allow them to participate more in climate financing without having to feel like they're exposed to like crypto markets and the index fact, like kind of how index Klima acts as an index for carbon. It's going to be as volatile as a carbon market will be.
Okay, well, I've got a few other ideas along that line of thinking. One is to create something kind of like the techno capital machine from Morpheus or other players that came just before that, where basically you auto compound the profit from another asset into base carbon tons or into KUSD or something, right? So I could take like my Lido ETH, like the ST ETH, and take the staking appreciation from it, and without giving up the base ETH, just continually compound the gains into KUSD, for example.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I actually was toying with this idea the other day with KUSD's bond system of kind of like money streams. That concept that's been around with I can't remember which EIP it was or ERC it was, but the idea basically being able to pay a friend, be like, hey, can I pay you $5 of my yield that I'll receive when my bond matures in so many days, and then it would have a certain amount of allowance toward that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of especially the space I think that's really intriguing for this type of financialization and socialization of these products is this new social graph that's forming around Farcaster. I'm really excited around mini apps. Right now, I'm toying with a thing I'm calling the Climate Mini app, where I'm going to try and make it a little more approachable than white papers and make it a little more engaging, make it feel a little more like a mobile experience, so people can get caught up on Klima and potentially, inside of their Warpcast wallet or Warplet, if you like to call it that. You could stake your Klima in the fair launch or retire some carbon maybe. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunity for creativity on top of carbon that is really opening up, especially with moving over to base. I think helps us have a lot more access to institutions and consumers. That building in the social graph, like on Farcaster, they're opening that up to Coinbase Wallet is developing their own feed for Farcaster networks or Snapchain. So I'm really excited to see how many. I think we've seen experiments like this in the past in DeFi, but the experience in the UI wasn't quite there. But I feel like now, especially with account abstraction right around the corner, like that's really going to set things off where people are going to have social recovery. We're going to have like now with passkeys and how much people, even since 2020, people now know how to use QR codes a lot better than they used to. Like,
Yeah,
'cause they have more than that.
there's definitely lower baried entries, as you said, especially with account abstraction. But also, this is one of the things where, at least in the more left-leaning area of the political spectrum, right, there's peer pressure that you can use to really get some adoption, right? Like the fact that you can provably or have provably offset your carbon, right, can be kind of a bragging right. It can be something you can prove with a zero knowledge proof, or we could make little visualizations on top of that. But even not just with your circle of friends, even just in crypto, there are crypto communities, and you can probably leverage the community aspect in order to do community projects to have the whole community offset. So a couple of years ago, I was talking to Klima about having a digital tree that would package the carbon tons inside of it in some yield-bearing form. So you basically have a digital tree that the yield from the carbon tons was soaking up real carbon from the real world atmosphere. I thought it was a cool way to kind of join a physical and electronic realm in a productive way, right? So we could
Yeah, I would love to see that. Especially, it'd be so much easier to predict with bond markets having like knowing exactly how much you're going to earn over a certain period of time. You'd be able to like you could even with that knowledge you could even generate like the animation over time of it growing slowly, like frame by frame per day.
There's a project around the same time that Klima 1.0 launched that was called Crypto Trunks.
Yeah,
Which is
I remember
basically
that one.
like
That
an
was good.
NFT tree. Yeah, they've morphed into Wallet Garden, But I was like, I like the idea of being able to back a crypto trunk, not with ETH that I spent to roll around a number, but with base carbon tons. And I was like, maybe we could get a community forest for something like EV Mavericks, where we could have members basically prove that they had contributed a tree to the forest, and then the NFT would be bound to a collection for that given community. And then you could have community rankings for which community had the biggest carbon offsets, and other sort of gamified systems on top of it. Or we could give them, I don't know, voting rights or something, or some type of ongoing engagement opportunity for it. But I keep coming back to, this is one of the things that has a net positive to the world to collect. And you want to leverage the sort of collector instinct that people have, and the sort of social bragging right that people have, to create a kind of peer pressure and ongoing engagement with the system, rather than you show up at tax time or something and, you know, just do it and you're isolated in that behavior.
Yeah, I've had a lot of ideas I've toyed around with in the past that the two problems I always ran into, like for example, one back in the day was Rings of Retirement. I made like an NFT series that you could, if you had the most retirements of a carbon asset like BCT or NCT, then you could snatch it from the wallet that it's currently in, as long as you were the top dog. So it's kind of a king of the hill situation. And I, at the time, the thing that really held it back was UI and being able to have it be discovered. But now with stuff like mini apps, that design surface is so much more accessible to people that I'm probably going to resurrect that in like all these little ideas that are sitting inside of the Klima Discord from years ago. People just talking about, even the NFT project or the idea you mentioned before is probably in the chat. I would love to take that same creative spirit and rekindle it, basically. That's been still there, but slowly, you know, over time, it's hard to keep that many people enthusiastic about the same project, especially in the fast-moving world. So I'd like to take, now that with Klima 2.0, it's the perfect opportunity to get that creative energy flowing. And like, I really like that idea you had with like the collector's mentality. If people want to collect, let them collect something that has an intrinsic meaning behind it. That especially now with like, what also held me back in the past was having artwork and being able to. I'd love to someday have like an art collective be able to produce products really easily with like a mini app or something like that is based in KUSD, and they could benefit over time from the yield or the lending products that can exist for KUSD. There's so much opportunity for, or like even you were talking about people being able to access climate financing as a collective. Like municipal bonds are a good example. People buy into cities. Cities could also help finance themselves by participating in more environmental asset financing, climate financing. It's something that is such a thing that we all need, that it's going to be in demand. That you mentioned earlier, it's more of a left-leaning thing, but lately I've been even thinking about that a lot, and how even people who aren't necessarily hippies, if you want to call it that, they still might talk to somebody who can frame it in a way that they can see the climate crisis in a way that reframes it for them. Like AI is a good example. There's a lot of, if you speak to ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, all of them in their solutions for climate change will mention some sort of carbon pricing mechanism as part of a market-based solution alongside policy solutions. That even if you don't necessarily believe in climate change, you might believe that there's a market opportunity. Like that, if somebody thinks there's a gun to their head because of the climate crisis, I mean, that sounds like a great opportunity for you to own the picks and shovels. If you're putting the most pessimistic spin on it, like there's still an opportunity for climate financing to succeed, which I think a lot of people overlook at times.
So I went ahead and purchased, I got 704 Klima for 0.1 ETH.
Nice.
I mowed my lawn today with a gas engine, so I need to offset the lawn mowing, and I need to offset the burning of a Christmas tree last weekend. It was pretty, but
I somehow doubt that's like $180, but you know.
Yeah. Listen, man, I like to burn a lot of Christmas trees whenever they end up in my backyard. They're fun to watch.
He
like
makes a lot
kennel.
of beans, you know. It's makes some methane. You gotta.
I gotta reach back into my past, my dirty carbon past here. So I just hit stake the max, It says, note, it is best to leave this amount staked until the end of the fair launch period. Unstaking your Klima will always result in a penalty. Fine. So max, and then I click on the stake and I hit approve, and it pops up on the old MetaMask here, and then that's going to get fired off over to the lattice at some point. Let's see. All right. And there it is. Hit approve and rugged. All right. So
I actually wrote all these smart contracts.
did you really?
So if anything goes wrong, don't blame Claude. No, I'm joking.
Blame Claude.
It wasn't me.
It wasn't me?
We got it audited by Halberd, so
That's
I feel
awesome.
confident.
Good for you. Okay, I'm going to hit submit. All right, sign a second one here. It looks like. There he goes. Signed a second. Back over to the lattice. Signed it. Submitting. That's cool that you wrote all the smart contract stuff for this too. And that goes to my second question from earlier is how big's your team? You're a co-founder.
So a lot of the people actually work now at a spin out called Carbon Mark, which is a product or like a company that was formed from a lot of the early founders who, and it's still an interconnected web between the people who work or like the people who contribute to Klima Foundation and the code with Klima protocol itself, along with Carbon Mark. It's a lot of people who go in between because obviously there's shared expertise and knowledge there. But I would say between at times it was huge. It's gotten a lot smaller nowadays. It's probably a few dozen people. Engineering wise, it's probably closer to like, I don't know, dozen or so. I'm not CTO, so I couldn't be quoted for that. You could talk to Atmosphereful about that one. But
that's cool. Yeah,
it's really cool to see that a lot of people still contribute, and part of the reason it's kind of hard for me to know is because it's not. I don't really. I haven't been super involved on the actual organization side. Part of that because I've been a U.S. participant the entire time, so it's legalese wise, it's easier for me to be more of a community builder, contributor on this side, and less signing on the paperwork.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like it's been really cool to watch people. We still have a dedicated set of contributors, whether that be paid or just community contributors over time. And some people have filtered in and out of that list. Myself, I've come in and out of different roles in KlimaDAO, where initially I was more community manager and helping to do a lot of marketing, and then I did developer relations at times. And now I've come back to do some engineering work and do some community building or rekindling again with Klima 2.0. And like I never left at any point, but just I've always been part of like advising, lending whatever expertise I could from my DeFi knowledge and technical expertise that I picked up from just reading smart contracts and reading the news over the years, keeping abreast of all the security and Ethereum upgrades over time. But like it's been really fulfilling to see something like I feel like writing this smart contract had like an emotional toll in the sense it was like like sending a kid off to college.
Yeah,
we're like we finally we're the Swiss Foundation, and you're going to 2.0, and you have the refined tokenomics model, and you're just like showing up, and now you get to it feels kind of like I like to compare it to like MakerDAO or ETH Lenda, Aave, where it feels like we went through the trials of figuring out what worked, what didn't work, what frictions needed to be overcome, what technological solutions needed to be developed in the in-between time, partnerships that needed formed. That it just feels like we're ready. I don't know. It feels like going to the championship or something. Like,
that's fun.
I just hope. I know.
Any of these projects,
it's got a buzz to it.
Any of these projects that have lasted through 2 bear markets or so, they really. You start to see the stickiness of the long-term vision, and you guys should be pretty proud. Before we move on to the rest of our show, what's next? What else can we be looking forward to from either KlimaDAO or Chaz Schmidt?
I would just say I'm like I said, I'm taking on a renewed role in the community, trying to get more people involved again with KlimaDAO. We have spent the time to figure out the next steps forward, and now we all need to move forward on the same page and really spread the message of what Klima 2.0 is going to bring on chain and bring industries using real blockchain rails at capacity in a way that people keep saying we need apps, but what we really need is people to fill block space. And if that block space can be their carbon account, their climate financing, their carbon accounting, that's one more use case that we can fill blocks with. That's one more one more notch in our belt in terms of finance that we disrupted a market and we brought it on chain where it really should be all along. And what I'm excited for is to see how people really own it, because there was a point in time where I felt like I wasn't that early to Klima or that early to Ethereum or DeFi, but nowadays it seems foolish to even think that. And I'm
Exactly.
sure some people will think that with Klima DAO in the future when they think about climate financing. That we're at this point we've been cited in dozens, over 100 and something academic papers and citations, and I'm like, that's sticking power. That as long as as long as we continue to be only one that stands and continue to expand the environmental asset portfolio and make it a way that everybody can continue to join in, I can only imagine that over time, it's only going to be more accessible, whether that be directly from the Klima protocol or an app lower than that, or some sort of company that uses it on their back end. It just feels like the early days of the internet as much as the early days of Ethereum felt like.
Bingo.
That to me.
I look at the price of ETH and it's down or whatever, and I look at like it's 10 years old and what's going on, and then I remind myself, especially to new people, it's like it's never too late to be early again. There's a whole new wave of people. Like, it's sticky, man. I mean, I'm still here, and you're still here, and Logri's still here, and there's so many Mavericks that are just working and doing things now, and we know a ton of people that aren't like, this is their life and their well-being, and you might as well do something positive while you're in the space. So hats off to you, man.
The beauty of some of the projects too is, like, for example, one of ours was like enhanced cooking stoves, which were removing dangerous chemicals. Like, people can now have clean drinking water by boiling it by using electric stoves. And I don't know, it's just something touching to see a human element to being able to use these blockchain solutions for financing in a way that there's no disingenuous kind of greenwashing to it. It's just genuinely taking the money from point A to B where it needs to be and using their best rails to do it. And it feels good because it's the right thing to do. If that's what you're trying to do and create impact, that's how you do it. So
yeah, and
that's what I like the most about it.
As far as
one unique advantage of a blockchain in this realm is that so many of the carbon projects are international in nature, and so you start getting into running into the complexities of multiple nations' laws, and that tends to gum up the works at a bureaucratic level and make things harder to get approval for and slow things down. And with blockchains, we just generally don't have to worry about that as much, right? Because it's one set of rules that applies to everyone on the chain. The rules are, often simpler for not even attempting to have to jump through arbitrary hoops. So I think that this is a good area for blockchain, partly for that reason, partly just because TradFi has really poorly served it, partly because it's something that is, we need something a little bit less scammy to kind of be able to say, like, well, what has blockchain done for the world? And be like, well, we built a whole rather than meme coins and high inflationary tokens and food coins and fart coin and scam, whatever, celebrity coins. I like to have something positive that I can trot out, like ENS and like Klima, right? To kind of get people to realize that they're in a sea of somewhat at least sketchy gray hat action, right? There are some truly positive projects like Green Pill, Gitcoin Grants, Klima, etc., that people can and should pay more attention to because they're doing good for the world.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I definitely think that blockchain enables a lot of people to affect not only change in the internet or the world around them, but local change too. A lot of tools that we use here on a global level could be applied on a more local level. That if people could, especially with like AI and the way, vibe coding obviously has its connotations, but like the way programmability is becoming more accessible, programmable money is going to be a powerful force for society.
Good stuff.
Well, I'm looking forward to the KUSD thing, of course, and I'm looking forward to a bunch of abstractions that we can gamify on top of this to try and encourage participation. I think that account abstraction, being able to go from someone that doesn't even have a blockchain wallet to use a credit card to deal with the chain, right? Is a fun way they can kind of back themselves into adopting a blockchain, getting a wallet later type of thing, right? So I'm maybe happy to see some of that come out. I think account abstraction just has a million applications, but I think this is a great example of one.
Yeah, and I'm really excited for I can't remember what the number is for it, but the one that allows for you to set contract code for one transaction. That's really exciting for the idea of if somebody wanted to take a look at say somebody wanted to do like a percentage of their yearly profit or something like that and donate it toward carbon bond, or not donate it, but dedicate it toward climate financing to over a certain period of time. There's ways that people can do it with ease once it's and people will develop the right product solutions for that because yeah, I think I think that the market ultimately starts from industry providers out. I think that's something I would want people who are listening or watching to take away, is that when it comes to climate impact, the the larger the impact of your change starts, the more impact it's going to have. So if you're starting from like reducing carbon, that's going to be larger things like transportation or energy production. And we shouldn't get so hung up on the rat races of like which bin of what number 5 plastic bin do I put it in, and being paralyzed by the smaller decisions, when activating larger forces like climate finance at scale or renewable energy at scale is something that's going to serve us way better and be a more singular focus that we can actually find solutions for, compared to the more, and then work your way down to the more complex problems. Like hit the easy problems first, which is find the biggest, most impactful decision you can find.
Do you think that there would be interest from Klima in creating something equivalent to what we did for Rocket School to help people onboard to the climate ecosystem, especially if you're trying to get to people that are outside of crypto? Having something that's a polished onboarding, can go a lot further than a dev doc.
I definitely think so. I definitely think, especially as we see how the typical, once we get a little bit of feedback from the initial launch of Klima 2.0, I feel like that's going to be extremely vital to making educational materials like this.
Because, yeah, I think we're 6 to 12 months too early to do it, but nonetheless, once you have the technical, once you have the baseline there, the smart contracts are there, once account abstraction is there, once you're looking at how to get people to just understand what a base carbon ton is, what the different baskets are,
and understanding their role in the system. Their role in the system is going to be a big one. Like knowing how to pull the levers that exist inside of the autonomous asset manager that is the design of Klima 2.0. Like I like to say, it's like putting the autonomous back in DAO, where it's not snapshot voting, it's not people going to a forum, it's straight up you using your staking power to pull the lever that is this capacity toward this carbon asset, or pricing at this carbon asset, and or environmental asset to expand it out into the future. Yeah, I think it's an exciting experiment into the future.
I can understand what you're saying when you say that, but I don't think my mom could. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So
and that's we're making
we definitely need some polish there. And that's where I said maybe we should consider something in a couple months, like Rocket School, where we can really try to polish it, with videos and animation.
And that's why I think there's a big opportunity for mini apps too. Is like an experience where you're meeting people in a social feed, and you're meeting them in a context that's more approachable to them. It's not sending them off to a white paper and having them look at all the math, because that scares them. They want to know how much how much impact they're making, but not necessarily have to see every single.
Well, you want to be able to do this like at a table, at a bar, on someone's phone.
Exactly.
Right? Be like, I just did this thing, and isn't this cool? And then you buy them a pint, and then they buy a pint's worth of carbon credits or something as like share a glass and goodwill, right? You want something that's at that level,
or even just interacting, spending in social circles in KUSD is enough that would help take supply off the table for people to have to like just more circulation of that economy would help finance more carbon projects. That even just paying somebody back, like I owe you
at a finance
$5
level,
off
at
the
a
bond.
DeFi level, yeah, if you can get an interest-bearing mechanism here, however that would look,
That's it.
I think we can
Yep.
gamify that in a lot of ways. That's one thing. So you said KUSD, I was like, okay, I can see how we could build my forest type of idea on top of that, right?
I also really, I really have always
NFT
liked
tree.
the idea of lossless lotteries too. Lossless lotteries with this type of yield system. If it's a reliable enough yield, it can be attractive to a large set of people.
Yeah, sure. That's just we have the code for that around, right? We have the code for the forfeiting of the interest towards another cause. We have the code for self-compounding and your beefy style things, right? We've got all of the smart contract examples to access this stuff quickly once you have the KUSD products available to start with, right? And then it's a matter of getting not just the these other projects on chain, but building all the interfaces and making them discoverable and building an ecosystem around this project. Because, you know, someone's going to come in and say, well, I'm going to stake on your behalf. Like immediately someone's going to come in and liquid locker this thing, right? Whether it's Convex or someone else. And they're going to take care of the voting because the average person does, maybe they'll vote once. They're not going to check on it every time, right? So someone's going to come in and split the voting right from the monetary right and create a liquid locker on this. And we want that to be part of an ecosystem as well. We want the NFT crowd to be part of an ecosystem. We want, you know, every part of this should be discoverable by people interested in a topic. And for that, you need something like the types of pages that Haniaga builds regularly, right? Not to put too fine of a point on it, but like we've done a good job of that in certain realms. And I think Klima is going to need a lot more on the UX discoverability and education side of that to really polish it, because your target audience here isn't just corporations. It should be just common people.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Chaz, if you want to hang out, you can. We love color commentators that can stick around. I don't know if you've got time or if you need to skedaddle, but we're going to run the daily Doots now. We're going to read the best of the last week in our Ethereum. I should also mention, Chaz, it's okay to come back to Reddit every now and then and hang out in the daily.
Yeah, I need to
do some masterful shit
I've been
posting.
I've been trying to dedicate myself to putting more back into social media, so I need to put Reddit back into that rotation. For sure.
We're the good social media. We're the wholesome.
I really should just unfollow all the other subreddits except for Ethereum and ETH
There
Finance.
you go.
I guess ETH Finance is fine now.
I've got like 3 subreddits that I actively have my short list, right? It's like world news and Ethereum. And I'm not using Reddit for much, but this is a community that's worth being part of. So
I've been doing that to my Twitter lately, unfollowing a lot of like moving old like dead crypto projects to like a nostalgia list and taking off on following. I need to just take all the old subreddits and just pare them all down to Ethereum.
Well, yeah, the Ethereum.
Yeah, I don't think you need to follow Request Finance anymore, you know?
Yes. So ETH Finance is now our Ethereum. So our the daily's in the most technical sub, which is perfect for like, I mean, there's some researchers in there every now and then. And if you want to come in there and, throw some code around and say, what am I missing here? You never know. You might get some love out of that.
But... Yeah, right after this, I'm going to unsubscribe to all the other ones. So whenever I open Reddit, that's all it's going to be. Because that way I can hijack the habit I already have and just like...
There's a link on the Daily Doots site. So JT has his Daily Doots site up on the screen right now.
Yeah.
There's a link to the current daily over on the left-hand side. If you just bookmark that, you can skip having to go to our Ethereum entirely. It'll just take you straight. It'll redirect straight to the current daily. And you can just bookmark that in your browser bar and hop right to it.
Isn't that handy?
Oh, nice. That's a good one.
Yeah, handy Abu
strikes again. Go through the our Ethereum link, and at that point, you're barely using Reddit. You're using something that looks more like a board, right?
And look at that. Even the previous daily too. And then anyone out there on X, if you're not already following us, or on YouTube or on Twitch, we've got all of our links right up here. You can find all of our socials. We need more likes on the LinkedIn page. I'm going to show the LinkedIn page because technically we can stream straight to LinkedIn. And we got 6 followers. We need to get up to 40 followers. and then we'll be able to stream on LinkedIn. And how exciting will that be? If we don't get to 40 followers, let's say by June 1st, I'm going to club a baby seal. Okay, we're just gonna go hard like that. So
burn a tree.
We're gonna burn a tree and then cook the baby seal on it. See, so
I'm signing in.
I'm just kidding. I love trees. All right. Let's see. Let's go ahead and jump on over to dailydoots.com. This is all the cool stuff from last week in our Ethereum. If you didn't get a chance to read it, I'm going to read it for you so you don't have to. But before that, let's get into our intro. The weekly Doots live stream is all about showcasing the best of the week from the ETH Finance Daily on our Ethereum. This is a read-along reaction series, and if you want to follow along, head on over to dailydoots.com, designed and produced by our very own Hani Abu. Big thanks to Tricky Troll for capturing and curating each day's Doots, and the A-Word for curating this most beloved weekly list. Make sure to subscribe to us anywhere you get your podcast. Just search ETH Finance EV Mavericks. We're also available on Libsyn, Spotify, blah, blah, blah. You can mint this episode in a few hours at pods.media/EV Mavericks if you want to buy us a coffee. And as always, if you know anybody that wants a piece of this action, send them my way. Well, I think it's about time, huh? You know? All right, here we go. This is this week's leaderboard, starting at number 10, 696 ETH at 111, Aiden Cairo at 118, Ethical Trade at 118. That's a tie. Crypto Wow Currency in 119, Hani Abu at 124, Tricky Troll sits at 154, Benito 2030 at 170, Logri the Bard at number 3 spot at 196, Harog climbing up. Harog had 2 double doot days last week at 198. Both of those guys are about to break the 200 mark, and sitting atop the leaderboard, we got Super Fizz at 221. All right, coming up, FarCon is happening right now in New York City. Amsterdam, ETH Dam, May 9th through the 11th. Also at the same time, Lisbon is having their ETH conference in Portugal. May 9th to May 10th, boy, it's busy over there. Bratislava, Slovakia. May 14th to the 16th, Toronto. Consensus Toronto takes place in Hong Kong. ETH Dublin, I wish I could be there in May. Dublin, Ireland, May 23rd through the 25th. There's a lot going on in May. Healdsburg, California is having Edge Esmeralda, May 24th through the 21st. May 27th through the 29th, ETH Prague, beautiful city I want to visit someday. And then the ETH Global at Prague is taking place May 30th through the 1st of June. And then Pragma Prague, boy, there's all kinds of stuff going on there. Awesome city. All right, let's do it. We got our weekly roundup, I think. Yep, let's do it. We've got Mike Rainbow from, nope, this is old. We got Ram Aliwalia from Lumina Wealth, Ali Madajavi from Blockchain Founders Fund on the 23rd. Ram's on the 30th. No show so far on June 6th and the 13th. I'll be in Ireland. June 20th to be determined. We have Afo and Matt from Green Pill coming on June 27th. All right, here we go. The morning roundup. $10.9 chimes in. Ethereum Frank the Tank gives us a dismal price, better than it was, 1833.67. And a self-made millionaire chimes in with a crappy ass ratio at 0.018. Oh my God. Okay, it's no good. Weekly Haiku JS tiers, roadmap relevant, consequent self-evident, raising sentiment. How does he do it? JS tiers, how do you do it? All right. Our first weekly doot of this week, Spupil 6. What is this username? Discusses Neithermind's groundbreaking testnet. Spupil 6 is a dooter number 4. I did not see it posted yesterday, but Neithermind Surge rollup is live on testnet. Here's a Twitter link. A based rollup with giga gas capacity. What? This warms my heart the most. Stage 2 by launch. Let's go. All right, fully open source for maximum transparency, uses ETH for gas, no native token, and contributes to the burn with 100% of base fees. This is what I like to see. That's a cool post. Good on you. Logri the Bard explains why L2s on Bitcoin won't be all that consequential. Ooh, could get spicy. Assuming Opcat goes through and all you're doing is validating ZK snarks on chain and can enforce validator slashing on chain. Number one, you reduce Bitcoin to a data availability layer, and its bandwidth is actually pathetic compared to everything else. Number two, you are still hashing and consuming a ton of extra power, which has to be paid for somehow. They need like $50,000 a block in fees because they are 99.5% less power efficient than Ethereum. Who wants to pay that much more for a less efficient system? What do they get for the extra cost? Number three, at best, you create the same liquidity fragmentation problems Ethereum has today, but with no solution. There's no pre-confirmations on Bitcoin. There's no account abstraction. You still have 15-minute block times. And finally, number four, the only thing I can identify that you get for these factors is access to native Bitcoin. This means actually trustless Bitcoin instead of the multi-sig bridges we get today. But if you have Opcat, you can bridge native Bitcoin to another chain and have that bridge actually be trustless, in which case, use the better network with the trustless Bitcoin. Why do you need the Bitcoin network then? Sunset the whole thing and use a better tech stack. Good points, Logri the Bard. All right, Nicola J.
Chaz, been around a while.
Yeah, hit it.
What's your take on that?
Sorry, what was that?
Chaz
I think.
Still around?
Sorry.
You've been
I think
around
you
a
cut
while.
out.
Yeah, you've been around a while. What's your take on that? Am I being overly ETH maxi there?
No. Bitcoin has been in this identity crisis for a while, where it started around the big blocks argument, big blocks, small blocks argument, where the people never formed a particular formal way of governing the system, and so they're never going to come up with a solution for the fees and for the security network. At least at this rate. I mean, I haven't seen any evidence
The
up to
solution to the
date.
fees the solution to the fees would just be, oh, there's so much demand for the Bitcoin block space that it's there. But like, what?
It's not coming. Not with the current culture around Bitcoin, at least.
Well,
Like,
not even just that. Like, okay, so Sailor buys, I don't know, 10% of all the Bitcoin. Congratulations, Sailor. How many Bitcoin transactions does he make?
That's
Like,
it.
one a month?
It's being financialized in TradFi, but it's not actually being. It's not bringing new
ETFs,
users on
that's right.
chain.
It's
It's bringing
buy
Bitcoin to
ETFs,
the users, not users to Bitcoin.
Yes. And so the Bitcoin network isn't the value of Bitcoin. And so the Bitcoin tech stack powers the Bitcoin network, and it's decades old, right? And not likely to change because of ossification by design. So, like, what is the plan there? Every time I talk to Bitcoin Maxi, I don't get a good answer out of them. I know there was a bunch of ordinals, and there was a brief spike that looked a little bit promising for them, but that kind of faded just like the NFT hype did on Ethereum, or the meme coin cycle seems to have played out in Solana. Those things aren't enduring because there isn't fundamental value there, right?
Yeah.
So we are looking for things like tokenized securities exchanges, like the Texas Stock Exchange being on Ethereum. We're looking for things like for foreign exchanges at scale on Ethereum. We're looking for things like AI agent to AI agent, agentic meshes solving real problems. Like, these will create enduring demand for the network because they have, enduring value being brought to
Potentially state level currencies. I mean, like state level roll ups.
exactly.
That's a possibility.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see central bank digital currencies come out of Europe in the next decade, and those launch on Ethereum and L2s. But yeah, when I talk to Bitcoin maxis, I get hostility, sure. I don't get a very satisfactory answer, right? They love to do a bunch of whataboutism and try and attack Ethereum on certain things, and even then, a lot of them are just wildly misinformed as a point of fact, right? But I don't get really satisfactory answers to what's creating demand for the Bitcoin network, because it's not ETFs, and price go up doesn't make it any better, right? Because it doesn't change the security to load ratio, right? There's a certain amount to steal, and there's a certain amount of cost to steal it. If you double the price of Bitcoin, you are doubling the amount that you can steal.
And that's not even going into the hardware issues of ASICs, where like there's just a bottleneck or there's a monopoly on ASICs, and that steps away from the entire concept of decentralization. Yeah,
The ethics of
basically everyone. Yeah,
it feels like a house of cards in a way I would describe it. Like it feels like it built a house, but how long until a breeze comes and blows it over?
Can I riff on the House of Cards narrative? The value that has been captured by different governments. This is like, I've heard this muttered before on X, and it just blows my mind that if there's enough institutional and state actors invested in Bitcoin, when it invariably hits the security problem, then they're going to consider it too big to fail and pay transaction fees to keep it alive. Like, can you stick your head in your ass and
oh my!
Have you heard that before?
That's an impressive take.
I've actually read that's going to be a feature. I'm like, give me a freaking break. Can you imagine a crypto's too big to fail?
That's on the level of all banks are going to use Ripple. Exactly. Like I don't know. Maybe that one. I don't know. I've been.
Ripple's trying to Ripple buying Circle for $5 billion.
I've looked at a whole Bitcoin Renaissance thing like recently, because there's a bunch of Bitcoin L2s, end quote, definitely thicker quotes around L2s, but there's a bunch of Bitcoin L2s like what was it, Linnea or Citray or something, one of those two. That's built on top of BitVM, and there's the Bob ecosystem, and like I've tried to give it the benefit of the doubt, but it always comes back to the same problem of essentially at the core of the tech stack there is a multisig, right? Yeah. And it requires entirely off-chain enforcement. So like someone commits fraud, great. What do we do about it? Even if there is the proof of the fraud, the Bitcoin blockchain doesn't care about the proof of the fraud. It can't actually react to that proof and penalize someone. So there's no enforcement mechanism other than social consensus in the multi-sig, basically, right? And that isn't a tenable thing. It's reminiscent
of going clear back to like it feels like whenever I go and look, same deal. When I go look at the new layer 2s coming out based around Bitcoin, I feel like I retread the same path that I retread, almost half a decade to a decade ago, where it's like, well, if you put it into this state channel, well, now suddenly it's like, okay, but who's monitoring the state channel? Now you need watchtowers, and every time there's some sort of trust layer you're putting on top of it that it completely
trust layers, and you're reducing Bitcoin block space demand.
Yeah,
right. Right. It's a great point. The real answer is just to make the whole thing so efficient that you're not burning. It's over $150,000 per block of electricity, right? My 50K was way under, because it's basically very close. Actually, even at the current issuance of multiple Bitcoin per block, most miners are not profitable at like grid level electricity costs, right? So it's already likely to have the hash power go down. Next halving, I could see the hash power just literally halve. And then we'll be talking about this more.
Yeah, it's just...
So, yeah, I know I don't need to crap on Bitcoin as a network every week, but
I love it.
Since it was a Doots, I'll bring it up. And of course, when the next halving hits and we see the hash power spin down, we'll be talking about it more. I promise you.
Yeah.
Well, and if you look closely at like the history of ASICs, ASICs are like Bitcoin miners for people who aren't like familiar with terminology, but like the producers, you can always see a spike in hashing power a few months before a new one is announced. Which charitably you could say it's R&D, it's people testing out the new series. But means is you're hashing Bitcoin for months, and it's private markets of hashing power that for months before it gets available to the public, there's always a small monopoly on a new technology, and that's kind of the problem with this. The limited number of facilities that can produce this type of chip, that having your whole network security based on that sort of premise defeats the point of decentralizing the network.
If you got like F2 pool just by itself, that they decided that they were going to exit, and the way they're going to exit is they were going to double spend on Bitcoin, right? They're just going to attack it. And they were going to have a separate company somewhere else shorted on TradFi for like $100 billion, right? They alone would only have to basically buy a bunch of graphics if they took all the hashing that's been dedicated to them for the hard fork attack, right? and then they just bought a bunch of GPU power on like Amazon, Google Cloud Platform, DeepIn, whatever. That alone would be enough hash power already to attack the network, right? There's enough just free hash power. It's not enough to be the most efficient. It doesn't all have to be ASICs just to like do it for a couple days, right? But F2 Pool, just one of the miners has enough hash power to basically pull this off, right? And the concentration of power to a couple of the big miners is such a big threat, even ASIC or not, right? It's a big centralization point that no one talks about.
The other centralization thing is there's been the manufacturers of the ASICs it's been proven that they have, had preferred stock of units sold to certain miners and throttled others. The code in the ASICs wasn't allowed some of the other ones to produce as much hash rate. It's just dirty. It's freaking dirty. And speaking of carbon credits, just the amount of computational and electrical waste
for multiple clients too. That like the idea that you're gonna have one client that can then get swept. I don't know, the whole thing.
I get it.
Yeah, it could be improved. Is the simplest sense.
Could be improved.
Like I used to like Bitcoin, and I had to give up on it because people gave up on improving it.
Yeah,
that's a good way to put it.
All right, moving on down.
All right. Well, good luck, gents. I do have to go. I'm on a weird setup today, but I'm traveling. But
all right.
Good luck with the Doots.
Thanks, Enjoy. Man. Take care, Logri. Logri the Bard, tokenomicsexplained.com if you want to go check him out. User Nicola J shares the new DeFi Saver dashboard. Shout out to all the Nicolas at DeFi Saver. I don't know if you know this, Chaz, but they have like 5 people on their team named Nicola.
Do they specifically put that in the job listing, that preference for Nicola hires?
I think he said at one point they had like 13 Nicolas working there, but
that's crazy.
Yeah, they're sweethearts. So I ran into him in Denver. I got an awesome hoodie from them.
So the real reality is in the office place, everybody has a nickname. Because otherwise everybody looks at the same time.
That's right. Yeah. All right. This may be useful for DeFi users. We just released a dashboard for comparing various positions in different protocols at DeFi Saver. It's at app.defisaver.com/discover. And you don't need to connect your wallet to compare rates and LTVs across Aave, Compound, Fluid, Morpho, Maker, Spark, and Curve USD. It covers all these protocols across ETH mainnet, Arbitrum, Base, and Optimism. We'll be looking to expand it with more options like entering your actually wanted position so you get estimated net APYs too, for example. Would be super interested in any feedback and requests for extra additions here, so please shoot away if you've got anything. And there's the new, this interface here. Okay, so you can input your portfolio. Where did it say discover? Hit accept on this thing. All chains, all. So you can do long ETH. You can drill down all kinds of stuff. USDC, and it shows you the borrow APY, the max LTV, what protocol it's on. Geez, look at all this stuff, man. Gosh dang, it's been a while since I've been in here. That's like 200 line items easy in all the different ways. That's just for trying to go long on ETH. Now you could plug in for long BTC. That's all Aave, it looks like. Okay. Very cool. Good job. DeFi Saver's an OG. They've been around for a lot of years. I'm so glad that they got dooted this week. Nicola J is always a really super helpful person, even unrelated to their company. He's very helpful. Duder number 21 for this week, Nicola J. User E10K is FUD explains why Bitcoin security budget problem, while user Edmund Egger, fellow moderator, explains why Ethereum doesn't want Bitcoin's digital gold-like properties. Interesting. E10K is FUD is a Duder 32 this week, and it looks like Edmund's on there somewhere, but I couldn't find him easy. All right. The entirety of Bitcoin security is derived from the money paid to miners. The original idea in the white paper was that fees would eventually take over to pay for security when the issuance runs out.
Fatality.
Well, this has not happened. 15 years on, an issuance still pays for 99% of security. This is after 4 halvings. All right, but what if BTC goes up a lot? Doesn't that mean that we can still pay for security even with less BTC paid to miners? No. Security needs to be relative to what's being secured. Cost of attack relative to potential gain needs to be in proportion. This is why percent paid is all that mattered. Bitcoin halving cuts relative security in half. Ooh, interesting. I'm going to read that sentence again. Bitcoin halving cuts relative security in half. That's your bumper. That's a bumper sticker right there. That no one would understand except for a few people, but it looked good on your Chevy Chevette. All right, Bitcoin is fine until 2028. I know, I've got my popcorn going. Even then, it will likely stay secure. 2032, much less certain. There is currently no solution. All right, and then Edmund Edgar replies, the digital gold thing is based on being the first cryptocurrency, which is unique and cannot be duplicated. Having fixed algorithmic supply so you know exactly how much will be issued. I know gold doesn't have this, but people who are into digital gold thing apparently care about it a lot. And not doing a lot of system upgrades. So people think they know what they're getting. Ethereum couldn't do the first of those 3, which is probably the most important because Bitcoin already exists. We don't want a fixed algorithmic supply because we want to make sure we secure the network properly, which can't be guaranteed if you have fixed decreasing issuance. So we don't want to follow a Bitcoin there. Some Ethereum people try to meme ultrasound money as opposed to sound money, which is a crank economic theory that impresses gold bug types. Because we'll burn more fees. Oh, I did this right. On the basis that at any given time, Ethereum will probably do less money printing than Bitcoin and will likely actually have negative issuance because we'll burn more fees than we issue in staking rewards. But the people who are into this don't seem to want probable negative issuance. They want to be certain what the issuance will be. So this doesn't impress them. Not doing system upgrades conflicts with all the other problems we want to solve. We want to scale really big. We want to support L2s that can also scale really big. We want to give developers a lot of power and freedom to make new stuff, etc. A note from Henny Abu. Those things aren't needed for digital gold. Just because those are Bitcoin properties doesn't mean those properties are needed for such a title. I agree. Good stuff. And just on a personal note, like the digital gold thing, I mean, we don't even know how much gold is in the earth, so it's not really...
Yeah, I was thinking about that. That never fully set with me because gold is distributed throughout the planet. Like, I mean, it's not equally distributed, but it's at least distributed to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have, like, there's no definitive amount of gold. Just gold happens to have properties that are desirable. But it's speculative. I mean, you can't eat it. You need it for some electronics, and it's pretty on women and men or whatever. And there's that. But
a longer track record,
and it's just the longer track record is the biggest. That's the biggest thing, right?
And also, some things that people neglect to see too is some like of the gray market that gold fills today, that isn't filled by traditional finance. It wants to be off the books. That's why they use gold. That's why they would hand each other gold bars, like certain trade networks and stuff that aren't as formalized. It kind of defeats the point of like going directly on chain if you're going to be tracked at every step. Because then at that point you need like clean Bitcoin or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. It complicates the whole ordeal if you already just have gold you could have seized from somebody.
Right.
It's easier $5 wrench attack gold.
Right. Yeah, interesting. Okay. Reptile Potato. I love these usernames. Reptile potato. Duder number 2. Man, Duder number 2 with a big one this week. Reptile potato is tracking the institutional hype around stable coins. We have reached peak hype of institutions. Geez, I hope not. Banks and fintech wanting to create stable coins. It's a gold rush, they say. Most issuance methods are undecided, but if Ethereum catches all this potential, it will be massive for Ethereum. The new SEC chair is working right now to create regulatory clarity. Everyone is rushing to tokenization, stablecoins, and RWA. Let's say real world assets. Okay. Yep. The spring is getting max loaded, and everything is about to explode. Oh, max loaded? Wow. I like that. Okay, good. I got it. I got the spring thing. All right. Let's see. The spring is getting max loaded, and everything is about to explode. Let's see. I think I got something like that. There we go. Excellent. Very good. Very good, very good. It will be something most cannot comprehend. Let's hope Ethereum catches it all. But remember this, quote, there was no question that the blockchain we would start our tokenization on would be Ethereum. And that's not just a BlackRock thing. That's the natural default answer, unquote. That's BlackRock's head of digital assets, Robbie Mitchnick. And that's what he said in March. This is Sparta! All right. Clients have clearly made the choice that they really do value decentralization, credibility, and security. And that is a great advantage that Ethereum continues to have, unquote. Progmat, a Japanese company led by 3 major banks, Mizuho, Sumitomo Mitsui, and Mitsubishi UFJ, is preparing to issue a yen stablecoin. Wow. That's a businesskorea.co link. In response to the Trump administration's promotion of dollar stablecoins, Korean banks have decided to create a joint venture to issue a joint Korean stablecoin. The banks involved include KB Kukmin, Shinhan, Woori, Nongyup, IBK Industrial, Soyup, and Korea Financial Telecommunications and Clearing Institute, KFTC. Not to be confused with KFC, the chicken place. The financial services industry is on the verge of entering the crypto economy, according to Bank of America's CEO, Brian Moynihan. Quote, it's pretty clear there's going to be a stablecoin, unquote, Moynihan said in an interview with David Rubenstein on Tuesday. And again, the world's biggest banks and fintechs are all scrambling to roll out their own stablecoins. It's a sort of gold rush, there's a real word for you, driven by the anticipation that cryptocurrencies will transform the cross-border, there it is, payments market, according to payments.com. There are more articles that I could post about countries getting into this, but I think this comment doesn't need to be bigger than this already is. The point is clear. The stage is set. And the players are ready. And there's no stopping what's coming. Love it. I love it. I know what position I'm taking to prepare for this, and the ticker is ETH. User Tricky Troll delivers an ETH FUD Buster AI update. Tricky Troll is on the leaderboard. It has been for some time at 154. I have rescraped the Doots, and this time for version 2 of the bot. I have included metadata such as the post date and username ahead of each prompt. Chaz, you'll dig this. All right, so I'm going to give a little backstory here. So Tricky Troll, the way this Doots thing works is every day the top 10 of the previous daily's hot topics are posted at the top. I give them all a point. Yep. It's pretty rad. Tricky Troll does that job every day. Tricky Troll is building an AI bot that can be summoned on social media, and it's an ETH FUD busting bot. So it'll... That's awesome. Yeah, and we need help. What we need to do is feed the bot the data. And so what we're trying to do is like high value contributors are being tasked to like answer questions that often come up and answer in their own words. And then he goes back and scrapes those comments and and he feeds the machine. All right. It's pretty
Awesome.
It's pretty neat. So there we go. All right. Continuing on, I've rescraped the Doots, and this time for version 2 of the bot, I've included metadata such as the post date and username ahead of each prompt, as well as cleaned out stuff which didn't get scraped correctly the first time around, such as bold text and tables. I also reached out to Anthony Sassano, whoever that is, who is happy to let us use the Daily Gway as a source, whatever that is. I will need to transcribe the podcast first and then find the juicy FUD-busting parts, since all of his full episodes would be too much data. Imagine too much sassle. I can't imagine that's too much sassle. We need to digest all the sassle and put it in the FUD-busting bot, I think. I think that would be dip.
Hey, I hear it only takes a minute worth of speech nowadays. I didn't say it.
The next major step is to further refine the data set by removing noise like shitposts, which might be tricky. No, not me. Then I will need to create the validation data set, which is a manual job of finding the best submissions which answer a question. We're still a few weeks away from having the version 2 data set ready, but good process is being made. Yeah, it'd be cool if we could. It's just Reddit is so much quieter than it used to be to get like that data train going. It'd be nice if we could just sit down like 50 of the best people and just grind for a day on it, answering all the things in everybody's own words. It's like it's like an essay day. Here's like the 20 questions. We need everybody to sit down for one day and answer it in your best own way, and then just feed that FUD bot. Could you imagine like if you could just give the same 20 questions to Vitalik and Owaki and Sassano and you can articulate. You're an English guy.
Yeah, I was just thinking I should talk to Tricky Troll and see if there's any, because we could make a mini app for Farcaster and connect the two communities.
Thank you.
And then let people on the Farcaster side, you could have people rank answers and have like a leaderboard of like biggest brain, and let them take like the whoever holds like the highest ranking could have like the big brain NFT, and that grants you a role, like the big brain role in the Ethereum subreddit.
God, it's awesome. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that would be... It's just like, there's only so much bandwidth that I can have to, help him out with it. He's so dedicated. He needs to get paid to do this, man. I think there is a little bit of money out there, but Tricky Troll's he's young, man. He's really good at this stuff. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see, because we need it. I mean, I hate to use the word retarded, but like when you go on X, it's like, God, does it ever stop with the nonsense? Just the lying nonsense of
I'm in and out on X, where I have certain people for notifications. I come, I read the notifications, and I pop out. I get the information I need, and I get out.
I'm with you. I mean, I try to stay on Reddit, and then I've gotten really good at like whenever when I can feel the trigger, I can shut it down. Doesn't matter if it's like a political related thing. Like I've gotten so good at just like my real life is so much happier because I've limited the social media and all of it. Not, just really kind of just...
Yeah, I've tried to claw back some of that time for more actual social spaces, like, like Discord servers that are more meaningful to me, and like, spaces like Reddit and like
high quality
smaller communities. That's part of what I like, the spirit around high quality meets for sure. That's part of what I like about the community forming around like Farcasters. It just feels a little bit smaller, a little bit closer to what crypto Twitter was in the beginning. And like there's been other social experiments, but for something about Farcaster just feels like there's a little bit more traction this time. And like maybe that's just how it goes with every social graph that's built on like blockchain. Maybe it's just a little bit further every time, and one of them sticks.
Yep.
And that's kind of how the early internet was, with like just different protocols until one of them was just eventually. Now we all just have I almost said DSL, but that's not quite what you'd call it nowadays. But he got to a certain point where it normalized, where everybody had access to the internet at a decent speed and a wide variety of things. They weren't in walled gardens, and eventually it just becomes the internet instead of Usenet or AOL or whatever fashion you ended up getting on the internet with.
Yeah, I love being the age that I am in a way because of just a perspective over time. It's like I want to be first world problem-ish when I'm complaining that I can only get a 30 meg up connection at my office.
Yeah,
but it's like I'm streaming. Like I'm doing other things. I'm fine.
I'm in the same boat. Right across the street from me is gigabit, but right in my complex, it's not there. They're just not doing it. I'm like,
just do it how they do in South Asia and climb up on a pole and just throw a rope over to it and get it going. Like
my mom had to send a letter to them, because they had when she got faster internet, she had to send a letter to the company to send them a measurement off of Google Earth to be like, your system doesn't understand where my house is. It thinks I'm further back from the road than I am. So I'm within the limit. It's just you think I'm way further back.
Oh my gosh.
Had some sort of barn markers their house or something. It was funny.
That's funny. All right.
Yeah, when I was looking into when I was in school and trying to study as much as I could about Ethereum and trying to understand where it'd go. Well, one of the things I like to do is I would look back at the history of computers and then into mainframes and then clear into the early internet, and it's you could see not necessarily that history repeats itself, but it echoes that expression where you see some of those things kind of those sort of similar problems that pop up with a world computer, you might say, with Ethereum. And it's interesting how that stuff comes back around.
Yeah. I remember the days of 56K connections, and I was ecstatic that I could leave a connection open overnight and download a song. It would take all.
Wake up in the morning and listen to that 2 minutes song.
It's yeah. I mean, I already owned "Smells Like Teen Spirit," from Nirvana, but I didn't have a digital version of it. I felt like since I'd already paid for the CD version of it, then
you had the license.
I had the license. It's Anyway, that's funny. Yeah, and I remember when Metallica was going after Napster in the courts, and then. Fast forward, it's everybody's streaming, and it allows a lot of unknown artists to not have to filter through the labels in hopes of getting heard at the expense of not getting as much royalties. I mean, there's trade-offs to all this stuff too, because a lot of people don't buy physical medium anymore. But
I heard a troll kind of I think it was a tweet recently that was talking about if you want to test the decentralization of a blockchain, just start posting music, the direct data of music onto the blockchain, and wait until the lawyers start asking people and see how decentralized the network is. And I'm like, that's kind of funny. I mean,
yeah,
a little more low stakes than dealing with sanctioned state actors, but it tests the decentralized nature of the blockchain.
Interesting. Yeah, see how quick those letters start showing up,
and who they show up to, and they'll figure out
too. They got to figure it out, Interesting. All right, user Rhythm of ETH explains the benefit of increasing blobs. Rhythm of ETH is a Deuter number 20 for this week. L2s will stay at soft cap and won't truly compete for blobs. So you double the cap, you double the fee revenue, and fees have more space in the part for the cost curve that is decently monetized. Some people have argued that there's no incentive for L2s to fight for all the range between soft and max cap, such as 3 and 6 blobs. Pectra will make the cap 6 and 9, effectively focusing on the range that matters. But there are already proposals to put base fees and better blob cost curves that would improve this further. Until those come, anything that increases blob space is a good investment in the future of the ecosystem. Can you interpret this a little bit for me, Chaz, now that Love Agree's gone? L2s will stay at soft cap.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully understand the argument, but
they won't.
yeah, essentially, there's not going to be a whole lot of competition after it gets to a certain price point. There's going to be diminishing returns, so they'll always normalize this around a certain level. So if that level allows there to be more competition higher up on the curve, I mean, it's more adoption overall. So an increase in blob space, good investment in the future in the sense that when they do hit a max curve, it's going to be more cost effective for fees.
Excellent. Thank you.
Maybe.
All right. User Harog covers the ditching of EOF and ossification of the EVM. Harog is a 198. And as I said, Harog got 4 daily Doots this last week that I know of. He's just an all-star. In today's all-core devs testing call, the ACDT, EOF got taken out from the Fusaka upgrade. As expected, the call got quite spicy. After a long discussion, there was no agreement on the possible scope for EOF, so it was decided that it cannot be a part of Fusaka. No matter where you stand on the surprisingly heated debate in the last few months, EOF is a pretty clear failure of the Ethereum governance process. For years, EOF has been shifted from one hard fork for the next one. There was always something more important to focus on, but it was never outright shot down. That is why people continued to work on it, did research, and implemented it. In the last 1.5 years, it was agreed on several occasions that it will be part of the next upgrade, which most core devs agreed with, or in other words, only a minority disagreed. The debate heated up again in the last few weeks, and after an rt.eth core dev also voiced its opposition, it became obvious there is not enough agreement to even have a rough consensus on what to do with it. All in all, this is a lot of wasted resources spent on working on EOF over the years. This probably also shows that the EVM itself has ossified to a large degree, as it now looks pretty impossible to be able to upgrade it in at least the foreseeable future, roughly 5 years. An earlier attempt to change the EVM with eWASM was also not implemented. We will see if the EVM will get updated in the possible transition to snarkify Ethereum, or if the EVM really has ossified, which means the engineers will need to find solutions to snarkify the current EVM. We will see. I don't have any personal perspective on this. I couldn't even tell you what EOF is or what it does. But what I did see, at least on Twitter, was one of the researchers that is working on it has like kind of taken the high road and decided to just kind of give up on it and stay in good faith, moving forward. That I think his heart was hurt a little bit. You could tell. So I mean, I can't get into the politics of the foundation or anything like that. I can just say when somebody has sunk in a lot of time and resources trying to see something through, it stings. It stings in the moment. And that's true not just in EF, but obviously major things like NASA. There's things that there's been billions of dollars spent on that eventually just get shuttered, and it's kind of like a puzzle. And you can't always have a great explanation for everything. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Chaz, but you could just tell that there was some pain there.
I think that's a good perspective on it. I can't claim to be deep in spec. I've always been more focused on like the DeFi and application level, and not as deeply knowledgeable about the protocol level. But it seems like I do tend to agree with, like, it seems like this is a signal toward the EVM at least ossified for a medium time period, maybe for the next, until there's a new agreed upon standard we're moving toward. I've seen some chatter in crypto Twitter about, I can't remember the acronym off the top of my head. Vitalik posted some writings on it recently. I think it's a signal toward, I get what they're saying is it's a signal on that we might be pushing innovation out to the periphery, into layer 2s, into roll-ups, and less into the core of the protocol itself. And there is a trade-off to that. I think as long as earlier we were talking about how the Bitcoin network has ossified over time and there was a hard rejection of changes. I don't think that's even a remote possibility for the
Correct.
community.
I agree.
But it is good to look at it in terms of speed, which I think is what this comment brings up, is that, is ossification meaning that it'll take, 5 years to produce the next upgrade. It's a matter of perspective, obviously, but it's something that will shape the application layer and the business applications for Ethereum if you end up having to have the innovation pushed out of the protocol itself. It means that there's opportunities for stuff like kind of like what happened with the R1, this new rollup deploying. That's a good step in the right direction for having like rollup technology be more inherent to the core protocol being based in ETH. Yeah, I think it starts to spread out that design space for good or for bad. It opens up the door for more privatized or less decentralized solutions to creep in while there has to be workarounds, compromises, you might say, to be able to achieve the same goals without full support on the protocol level.
Excellent. Thank you. That's good perspective. I like it. All right. User Who Village. Who Village starts a discussion about long-term decentralization in block building. Who Village is a duder number 7 for this week. Does anyone else find it alarming that now researchers want to scale the base layer 1000x? The answer in Dankrad's eyes is stateless validators and beefy builders. He says CR will be solved by fossil, and hand waves away all the other benefits that the current more accessible system has. I understand the fact that Ethereum is I understand the fact that Ethereum building is already mega centralized right now. But this is fine because when all builders get shut down, we can build locally. But in his design, there is no fallback to local building possible. So that when all builders, of which there inevitably will be very few, are shut down or attacked, Ethereum may go down. For me, this design is a step too far and goes against core values of Ethereum. Am I understanding something wrong, or is everyone just okay with this version of Ethereum's future? You know what that is? That is a data center chain. We're not doing it. We can't do that. That's what that's screaming out. It's like Solana style stuff,
Yeah, you definitely don't want to gravitate toward less like bottlenecks in terms of below even the client level stack of building the blocks.
Okay, so I'm going to open up the thread because I wanted to see who else chimed in. Edmund Edgar, fellow moderator, chimed in. What he says, why is there no fallback to local building possible? In a stateless world, I can only include transactions I have proofs for. Is your concern that there will be nobody in the world who can construct the proofs? Ooh, Evan Van Ness appears. If I recall correctly, not deep in the weeds here lately, to be honest, to be a builder, you need to have a machine with enough RAM to hold state. So you need a heavy upfront investment. It's not the sort of thing where you can just instantaneously spin it up. However, you only need one honest party, and it's still a permissionless system. So even if you need a beefy server, you should still be okay. Of course, very few transactions flow through public transaction pools anymore, and the blob fee market doesn't work particularly well due to the cold start problem. So that might also go private. Edmund replies, why would you need the whole state in RAM? Is that to do with Verkle proofs or something? Or are we just talking about what you need to build the blocks really big or something like that? I'm not saying that Who Village or you are wrong. I'm just trying to understand the constraints. Evan Van Ness replies, builders need whole state in RAM. Basically, it's formalizing what de facto exists today. To build a block, you need to be a beefy server. Everyone else just checks the proof and the tests. And they go on from there. I'm going to give everybody an upvote in this thread. It's the least I could do, but it is honest work. And you can see it on the live stream. Interesting. All right. Saroneric. Ooh, I know who this is. Saroneric discusses the Ethereum nation and its L2 states. Chaz, do you know who this is? This is Ryan Berkman's. I reached out to him after he posted this on Twitter. I said, you should honestly stop by our Ethereum Daily and post there instead. So if you find this username, Saroneric, that is Ryan Berkman's. He's been a guest on the show before. A good person. All right. Duder number 1, also making the leaderboard, or making the weekly Doots. That's pretty rare, man. That's pretty rare to be a Duder number 1 and make the weekly. So, and I did not communicate any of this to Tricky Troll or the A Word. They came up with this on their own. So it was apparently important enough to make the daily, and even more important enough to make the weekly as I think this is our last one of the week. Saroneric discusses the Ethereum nation and its L2 states. All right, here we go. ETH's marketplace of L2s is inventive in a way that L1 will never be at any L1 scale. An example of how we have sometimes misinterpreted or disregarded the reality of the L2 marketplace being inventive and naturally producing deep differentiation lies in Martin's DevCon talk last November, where he pitched native rollups. Okay, Martin is a legend, and Gnosis's products are apex. I use him heavily, respectfully using his talk as an example here. In his talk, Martin proposed roughly 64 identical native rollups built into the layer 1 protocol at the EIP level. Given app devs of having the choice of 64 different rollups, Martin suggested to, quote, just use the least congested one, unquote. Yet, using a specific rollup primarily because it's the least congested is not representative of how this ecosystem of 64 rollups would actually evolve. You don't move to a new city because it's the least congested. Maybe in the Wild West, but not after very early days. You move there for a complex set of reasons: jobs, relationships, culture, costs, etc. If Martin's proposal had been adopted, what started as 64 identical empty rollups would quickly evolve into a market-based differentiation between these rollups based on accumulated state. Rollup number 37 of 64 might become known as the prediction market rollup for no other reason than because a prediction market happened to deploy there. And then another did, so they could compose or be nearby. And soon what started as an uncongested homogeneous rollup becomes a congested, differentiated prediction market suburb. Rollup number 18 might accidentally become a lending powerhouse. While popular lending protocols initially deployed to all 64 native rollups, some whales happened to decide, for no particular reason, to all lend simultaneously on rollup number 18. And this ended up creating a lending liquidity network effect. Modern lending venues like Fluid bundle dexes into the venue, and so rollup number 18 becomes a trading powerhouse too. Number 18 started as no different than any of the other 64, and then became unique due to emergent path dependence. And so it goes with an infinite variety of specializations, app-level network effects, and economies of scale. This kind of emergent differentiation is true with 64 vanilla rollups built into the protocol, and it's 1,000x more true when ETH's marketplace L2s that can differentiate not just in accumulated state, but in lots of other even more meaningful ways, such as branding, partnerships, integrations, level of decentralization, tech customizations, etc. The superpower of Ethereum's marketplace of L2s is that it's inventive. The L1 can't replace the marketplace of L2s, regardless of how scalable the L1 gets. Native rollups can't replace the marketplace of L2s, regardless of how technically scalable or perfectly secure native rollups can be. This is because L2s are inventive, and L2s offer the control and customization levers that serious builders want. Ethereum Nation, L2 states, and he's got a link to that tweet on X at Ryan Berkman's. There it is. Hit it if you haven't done so already. Give it a like and a repost. Or you can do whatever you want. All right. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That would be stupid. Bonus bounty. Here we go. This is it for the week. A bit of action on the bounty to put up posters in financial centers saying, quote, Ethereum is the only credible, neutral, global financial platform, unquote. This was kind of a shower thought coming out of some conversation here when I posted it on Warpcast. And then some decentralized tooling started to crank it into life. You know what? I might try to do something like this. 0.0714. Okay, so we need to make some posters. I think I might rent a billboard. I think that'd be fun. Do you know how cheap, Chaz? Do you know how cheap billboards are in Kansas? Cheap, baby.
I have no idea.
They're not. Well, you know, I don't know if you pay by the hour or the day.
Do they accept ETH?
Well, they may by the time I'm done with it.
Let's hope so.
We're getting real close, you know. It's getting real close where like they're receiving USD. What's a MoonPay?
Yeah.
MoonPay, is that? I heard something about a MoonPay card. Maybe, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, there's a few debit cards out there that take stable coins.
Yeah, stable coins. I'm curious what it would cost. I mean, I've spent money on dumber shit in my life. I mean, why not? You know, I did.
I'm always surprised that Dow never bought like a billboard and just runs it.
Yeah, well, sometimes they got bus and subway posters during conferences. But I mean, just read that though. Like, Ethereum is the only credible, neutral, global financial platform. That's a lot of words for somebody driving by on the interstate, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I say how cheap billboards are in Kansas, I'm talking Western Kansas.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about it. I was like, well, the reason a Dow wouldn't buy one is because they're so cheap. It means that you're not producing that much income, so that's why you have to buy a whole network of them, and that's why they're always distributed as a network. That makes sense. The answers find themselves eventually.
That's right. Well, Chaz, you stuck it out with us. You should come back anytime, man. But we can put you on stage if you just like hanging out on Fridays. If you got nothing else to do, we'd love to have you around as a color commentator. Logree's kind of the technical interviewer, and then, you know, we're always happy to have people on stage and chatting away with us. When we have other guests. We got a lot of nice guests lined up. I'm really, really happy with the way things are going. I'll do let me go through the guests that are coming up here in the coming weeks one more time before we shut this down. Mike Rainbow from Rainbow Wallet is coming on May 9th. Nixo from the EF on the 16th. Ali Madhavji, I'm going to mess that up. Blockchain Founders Fund. This is somebody who is not native to, they are not native to our Ethereum. They do have knowledge of Ethereum, but I think they're kind of a VC group. I'm kind of curious what their take is. It's always good to get guests outside the bubble. Ram Aliwali is coming up from Lumina Wealth. We've had him on before. Super knowledgeable at macro stuff. This guy is a lot of fun. I mean, I love talking to him whenever we get the chance. We've had to punt a couple of times because a lot of in real life financial stuff was going on, and he runs a pretty big firm, so he had to punt a couple times. That's fine. I get it. We're lucky when he's here. And then it looks like the next one with the guests is June 27th, and then I'll be looking for guests for June 20th. Afo and Matt on the 27th from a Green Pill Dev. So on behalf of Chaz Schmidt, my name is JT. Thanks for subbing and smashing the balls around here. Make sure you stick around after the live stream because we continue the party in the hotel lobby on a Discord for the bonus hour of popcorn. It's a fun place to let loose when the parents aren't watching on YouTube. Hi, Mom. On behalf of ETH Finance and the EV Maverick Style, my name is JT. Cheers and big hugs from Kansas City.